Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Trap Draw podcast. It is time for ball knowers, OTAs, organized ball knowing activities.
Let's go, Red 14. Let's go.
I, of course, am TC. I'm joined by my esteemed knowers, my colleagues, Mr. KVV. How are you, sir?
I'm always excited to have someone refer to me as an esteemed knower. You see, it just gets my blood pumping every time I hear you say that.
Of course, ball knower Poosh. Hello.
Hello, great to be back on your program. I love knowing. It's one of the great joys of life is knowing with you fellas. So let's do it. Let's know on tape.
Ball knower Randy could not be with us today. He's on location, doing some knowing research up in the upper Midwest. Did want to thank Mr. Jeezy. Thank you, Mr. Jeezy, through whom all things are possible. Also wanted to thank our good friend, Mr. Rob Gronkowski. If you head to our socials on No Laying Up, you will see we this was actually during the players earlier this year. We threw our QB rankings towards Gronk, and not sure he understood the exercise necessarily. He was
Big
pretty
surprise.
offended that we didn't have Aaron Rodgers in the mix on our QB rankings. He was very pro Goff.
Yeah,
anything else stick out to you guys on that front?
I think every time we throw one of these NFL players to like rank their 10 quarterbacks, it just shows what true knowers we really are. Like people think the NFL guys are the knowers, and then they just like end up kind of clowning themselves, talking about, Jameis didn't even remember that Jalen should be on the list at all, and then tried to backtrack and put like 20 people on the list, which I know you respect, DC, trying to fit more people on the list that are actually allowed. But this shows that like true knowers reside here.
Yeah, I feel like Jameis, that whole room in New York with Jameis and
Mr. Unlimited.
Mr. Unlimited, Jackson Dart, all sorts of knowing going on up in that room in the Meadowlands. So, and we've got some ServPro mea culpas. And really, this is KVV. I'll just tee you up here.
Thank you, Mr. TC. I have to come clean and say you can go back and listen to this, I'm sure. But I kind of made fun of you. I was like, there is no way that Purdy is going to take a lesser deal than like what the next highest value is. That's kind of how the union works. They make these guys push the limits further and further. They're all doing it for the collective good of quarterbacks everywhere. I said that the contract was probably going to break the Niners. It was going to start to be the beginning of the end. And then Purdy turned around and he signed a deal that was actually pretty team favorable. That was I think Mike Tannier said it was like a terrible contract because you couldn't make fun of it. Usually like these contracts, you just mock how bad that these teams get into contracts. And it was actually a pretty fair and reasonable deal for what Purdy had signed. And this is kind of right in line with what you said, Poosh. And I know, Poosh, you have your haters out there who tell you, you don't know the cap. You're not a true tape grinder, analytics knower. But this really proves that you were right, and I guess I'm going to cede the stage to you. You said he would get a deal done, and I was wrong.
Well, thank you. Appreciate your honesty and your candor. But I think the main thing here is I'm very, very in touch with my team. I know my team. I know my guys. I do study the tape. I have a degree in psychology. I'm breaking down their tone. I'm breaking down their body language. I'm looking at I'm exploring lots of different angles
you're
here.
A body language expert, Poosh. That is excellent to know.
I dabble. I just had a gut feeling that he was going to do that. Just the way that he operates, the way that he is kind of his whole kind of MO is just being that guy, lead by example. Not going to be not the flashiest. Not going to want to put the team behind the 8 ball just because he wants to make $60 million plus. And then I think the Josh Allen contract was kind of the writing was on the wall after that, because with Josh Allen takes $55 million AAV, it's really tough to say Brock Purdy is going to make more than Josh Allen next year. So I think that this whole thing just kind of underscores how poor the contract was for Dak Prescott, who makes $60 million a year and is essentially five clear of anybody else in the league, including Josh Allen, who
Yeah.
re-signed after the fact.
And there's not a
So
whole lot of off ramps with that one either.
no.
Many are saying that Dak stinks. Many have come around and their own some ServPro mea culpas. So the Dallas fans emailing us to apologize for our Dak takes.
Which, yeah, like even the current cap right now, I know Purdy is only at, Barnwell tweeted this, he's only at like 19% of the current cap, which is the lowest since 2020, other than Daniel Jones on the quarterback front. So,
and they have outs. I mean, it's a 5-year deal, but they have outs. And there's a no trade clause, which, that was probably his biggest negotiating point, was inserting the no trade clause. But there's outs with the contract later on, so it's not the biggest
and the
deal.
cap's going to go up like crazy.
Yeah,
It's going to
goes up
keep going
every year.
nuts. Yeah, they've already extended Kittle, already extended Fred. Parag's just doing work. Love the draft, which we'll get into. But Poosh, I think a lot of people owe you apologies.
Yeah, I'll be waiting for those bated breath. Waiting for my email to explode with apologies from all over the place. And my X Everything app account will hope I'm waiting. I'm turning notifications on, so I'll be waiting.
Well, thank you to ServPro, #1 brand in cleanup and restoration. They're known for making any mess like it never even happened. Over 2,200 locations nationwide. They're faster to any size disaster. Visit ServPro, I think servpro.com, or 1-800-ServPro today. They're here to help 24/7. So cleaning, restoration due to floods, storms, fires, mold, salary cap situations. I don't know if they deal with those, but the Saints could certainly use them down in the NFC South if need be. So I'm going to turn it over to ball knower Kevin to kind of lead the way the rest of this episode.
Thank you, TC. I was going to say the whole region of Louisiana and New Orleans should kind of have ServPro and speed dial, just because there's always disasters lurking in that area. And then I love those people. I love that area, but disasters right and left. Guys, it's OTA time. It's kind of check your nuts. Kind of what is your team shaping up to be? I think we're less than 100 days away from the NFL season, which means storylines are going to start to take shape. We're going to kind of figure out, what malcontents are out there. We love to keep track of the malcontents. And I just want to take a kind of a carousel tour around the league. Some of the items that are interesting us, kind of a little bit of a look back at the offseason. When we talked about the Super Bowl, we mostly ended up focusing on Philly and whether KC was in decline, whether we called KC's decline a year early, or Patrick Mahomes' decline, which we'll get to in a little bit. But I think, we always, when we do that, we kind of feel like we don't get to kind of give a proper wrap up to some of the other teams around the league and how we feel about them going into 2025. TC, I want to start down in Jacksonville because they are doing some interesting things. Hired a new coach in Liam Cohen, drafted Travis Hunter, #2 overall. I just want to punt it to you right first off. What has you excited? I know you're very excited about, Travis Hunter's going around. He's like meeting people on airplanes. He's like shaking hands with old ladies, kissing babies. I saw a video yesterday. He was just like wandering up to some guy who's like practicing in his yard, and he's shooting selfies with him. And the guys are just grown men with big tears in their eyes are crying at the sight of Travis Hunter to save the franchise. TC, what has you excited, and why will this be different?
Yeah, he's the one that we've been hunting up, right? He can
Yes.
he can just affect things just by his sheer presence as Gladstone so aptly said in his post-draft presser. So first and foremost, I think, which that got a lot of shit. People are shitting all over Gladstone, even Florio. Like the fact that Florio's shitting on him makes me like him even more.
I tend to go any the opposite direction of Florio, and so I kind of agree there.
Exactly. No, I think Tony Baselli has brought a much needed measure of just competency and just, I don't know, it seems like seemingly like lack of bullshit, and just like, hey, we're gonna make good decisions, we're gonna make sound decisions, and it seems like they're all aligned. Liam Cohen did wonders with Baker. down in
Yes.
Tampa Bay. I think, they've kind of, I don't know if they've solidified the offensive line, but I think they've probably stopped the free fall. The running game's been fucking atrocious the last 3 years
It has.
under Doug, and so I think fixing that. So I think, a lot of it comes back to Trevor, and then, like Travis Hunter, I love the deal. I thought the deal was ballsy. It was a weak draft, so you might as well go get the guy that is a sure thing, and in my opinion, he's kind of bust proof. Like if he
Okay.
doesn't work on offense, he's going to be a good corner. And I know we gave up the pick from last year, but it's a bad division. I think they can kind of turn this thing around pretty quickly.
Mhm.
There's a lot of talent. Like I still don't know what they're quite going to do on the interior defensive line, but we seem to have a lot of slot corners. But otherwise, safety, we got a kid from Navy. When in safety, we've got, as long as we get that back end figured out, I think Devin Lloyd's in a contract year. I don't know. I think the defense is going to be much improved. It sounded like the coordinator last year was just an absolute disaster. So I like the new coordinator. He's a Don Bosco guy, coached up some of Neil's buddies way back in the day. And but I think Travis Hunter, I don't know, he just brings a certain mentality to the
Yeah.
building of like, he's a winner. He just loves ball. And
Dude. Yeah.
I think, I don't know, I would rather, like, it seems like over the last 10 years we've just stockpiled picks, and for the most part, like, those picks are just that, they're picks, they're lottery tickets, right? And
Yeah.
so I would rather, cash that in for something, and then next year I think they have 2 or 3 third rounders already, which I'm all about top 100 picks. I think that's, like, the big thing. I think, obviously traded away the second rounder this year and the first rounder next year as part of this deal. But it just goes to show you, hey, go get the guy you like, go get the guy you want. I'm much more excited about that than having a first rounder next year than having Mason Graham this year too.
Are you excited enough that you will bring your boys to games in the 96-degree heat in the middle of the day, since you are a season ticket holder?
TBD. I will might have to reserve the pool.
Okay.
Right. We got the pool. I think we are gonna go over to the London game. I think I'm gonna bring
Okay. Exciting.
Alex and my mother-in-law over to that. They're playing the Rams over there, but the stadium's also under renovation right now for the next 2 years. So
Okay.
we'll see kind of how that works.
Get some
I'm actually
shade in there, maybe.
I'm surprised. Yeah, well, yeah, they're putting that roof, like kind of open air roof SoFi kind of deal on, but
Gotcha.
kind of surprised they're like we're not in London for like 3 or 4 weeks this
Yeah.
year. Maybe they're just going to do that next year, but I don't know.
Imagine
Poosh,
you. Yeah.
am I off base here with the Travis Hunter love?
No, I think we talked about it when it happened, but I liked it. I thought when you're a franchise like the Jaguars that has kind of been middling and kind of swimming in mediocrity for quite a while, you kind of needed something to jumpstart the energy in the whole building and the franchise. And there were only maybe one or two real legitimate blue chip guys in this draft, and Hunter was one of them. So
He was the best player in the draft.
he was the best player.
Mhm.
He's a generational talent. You see one of these kind of guys, very, very few times in your entire lifetime. A guy that played high level Division I football on both sides of the ball and was elite on both sides of the ball. He would have been the best wide receiver in the draft, and he was the best cornerback in the draft. So
Definitely best corner. I'll go there.
yeah, I mean, a lot of people had him number one too. As at wide receiver, Steve Smith, a lot of like other guys that do wide receiver content, they were all loving him. So BallKnowers, Nate, that group. So I mean, this is just a different kind of guy, and so you go and get him. You say, listen, we're going to go get the guy that we want to get. We're going to just get this dude, and he's going to, be the bar that everybody else has to look up to in this franchise. We're going to put this elite athlete, he's a good person. He seems, like from all the reports and all the, what we've seen, he just seems like a solid
Flies
face of the
United.
franchise, flies United.
Hmm.
We know that. That's just another
Yeah.
box
Kind of
check.
not a shithead, which feels
Yeah,
like a big
Exactly.
win. Like
And he
if
loves to
you,
fish. What a great
yeah,
place for
oh
him to be, right?
he seems like the complete
Um,
opposite of Shadur. You know what I mean? And it's like just
yeah,
that, like humble. I'm here to
yeah.
play football. I just want to ball. Like they talk about how he doesn't go out at all at Colorado. He just stays home and plays video games with his buddies, and like is not a
Yeah.
partier. It's
Yeah, I
go get
think
him.
it just fits. I think putting him opposite Brian Thomas, like I don't think people outside of Jacksonville quite understand like how freaking good Brian Thomas was
Thomas
last
is
year.
bad
And
boy.
yeah, and then you bring him in on certain packages, corner basis, but even beyond that, like they got this corner from Tulane, they got a nasty, nasty guard from West Virginia that I know they were after the whole time, and then the running back they got from Virginia Tech, Tootin. It sounds like he's going to play right away. I don't think the new regime's all that high on ETN and Tank. So and then Jack Kaiser from Notre Dame, the linebacker. So I like it, man. I'm buying up all the stock I can. I think Cohen knows what he's doing, and it'll be a more coherent operation here moving forward. I think they need one or two more drafts to totally turn over the roster, though.
I think the offensive floor goes up here. Obviously, I think the
Yeah,
competency level goes up. Another couple of stories from where it was with Doug and Co. and Balky, obviously, just having people that are at least average or better at their jobs is a good step up than what was going on down there before.
KVV, are we blowing smoke here? Are we turning the Jags into 49ers or Rams East, or is this
possibly.
is this
Listen,
warranted?
I'm excited for you guys to not have to deal with Doug anymore, because I
Doug
think
sucked.
Doug was quiet quitting after about week 3. I've never seen a coach that was just like in more like don't give a shit mode. Yeah, I don't know. Like we'll figure it out. We'll watch the tape.
My
Who
wife
knows?
still hates Trevor. Like I'm still like, no, like you got to believe in Trevor. He's gonna be fine. But
Well, as Poosh said, Trevor might be a dumb, and we just don't know whether that will like fully. I think this is probably the year the jury decides whether Trevor is above a dumb or below the dumb line. But it's I don't want to dig too much into the Jags because we're still looking at I think a 6-7 win team at best.
I mean,
We're going to take some
The
time to
Titans are a
rebuild.
disgrace. The
They are.
Colts are seemingly rudderless. And the Texans, who knows what's going on there? I actually like what the Texans have done personally.
I like their
We can
draft.
get
Yeah,
there.
Let's throw some around like who's on the hot seat for 2025, and I don't necessarily mean like who's going to get fired, but who is it sort of put up or shut up time. And I think I'd like to start with here in my hometown of the Baltimore Ravens. TC, you've
Wow.
been kind of critical of who you call Diet Baugh, John Harbaugh. He just got extended through 2028, so his job is not in jeopardy. But why haven't the Ravens been able to get over the hump? I have some takes here, but I want to sort of start with you guys as sort of people who get to see them, 4 or 5 times a year. We didn't really get to address their playoff collapse that much. It seemed like this roster was primed and ready, and they just kind of fumbled the bag against the Bills. What happened and why? Well, where do you go from here? You keep banging on Diet Baugh, and I want to know why.
KVV, I'll put the entire division on notice. All right.
Wow.
I think every coach in that division, Tomlin, some people have said that Tomlin's just running a marketing agency at this point up there in Pittsburgh. They're not serious about really contending. ZT, we've got some stuff emanating from there. We'll get to the Bengals here, but from Jamar about how they haven't come ready to play the last few years,
Yeah.
played anybody in the preseason. Like looking back, I think that Patriots loss week 1
Was
last year
embarrassing.
was maybe one of the worst in the entire league.
Cost
And
me
then the
$100 in the
Browns,
survivor pool. Yeah.
I think Stefanski is just, he needs kind of shit or get off the pot too. So, but back to the Ravens, I don't know if we can trust Lamb. I'm a massive, massive Lamb guy, but that could be part of it. They just seem to make a lot of stupid penalties.
Yeah.
Like,
Mistakes.
mistakes, fumbles, all sorts of stuff on that front. They're kind of running it back with the same core. So we'll see what happens. But I think that's the weird thing. Like you really can't put your finger on it. They're great on paper and they're great most of the year. And then when the chips are down, they kind of they it seems like they play to the level of their opponents, or they just don't seem to, they don't seem to be able to play a physical brand of football. And like, does that come back to the like are Lamb and Derrick Henry mismatched, or is the defense mismatched from what this roster is all about?
Or does the coach not know where his strengths lie?
Yeah,
Poosh,
I
any
think
Ravens thoughts?
yeah, I think it's a team. Well, first of all, they're second in the league in penalties last year behind the Jets. So, like you said, they're too many penalties. I think that those are killers in big games, and just in games in general. When you're fighting they had 132 penalties last year. That's a lot of penalties. That's just a lot of yards you're giving up,
Mhm.
and not even in the context of the game. Just if you were just to take them at face value, that's just a lot of yardage that you're automatically fighting. Secondly, it just seems like a team that they're always on the cusp roster wise, and they have. It seemed like 2 years ago that was the team that probably was the most well built team that was ready to, with the defense,
Yeah.
and then they had that kind of meltdown in the playoffs last year. The offense was kind of carrying the team. The defense was probably good enough, but then they abandoned their identity in the championship games, or the division or whatever it was, and they can't get over the hump. It just seems like a team that they lose their identity when it comes down to the playoffs, and they make really really bad mistakes, penalties, all these things, and that's a sign of, obviously, anyone else would be like, that's an undisciplined team. That's a team that's not coached well.
Mhm.
And so I think Harbaugh gets a lot of slack because of he has a Super Bowl, and the team's been good for a long time, and he is, I think he's well regarded as one of the top coaches in the NFL. But I think at some point you kind of have to go, well, is this going to get over the hump or not? Because you're kind of losing Lamar in his prime, and if you can't get over the hump with a guy like that, then maybe it's
Yeah.
time to look elsewhere.
KVV, are you
Mhm.
buying or selling on them?
I still think I'm buying. I think Pushy mentioned it and getting away from their identity. They didn't really get a lot of grief for this, but in that Bills game where they finally started to move the ball and they were pushing it down the field, and Andrews ultimately ended up fumbling. I think what the problem, and when no one really talked about it, is that like the Bills were dog tired and Henry was just running all over them. And even though like Andrews made the big mistake with the fumble and then ultimately like he doesn't catch the 2-point conversion at the end, if they just keep feeding Henry, like they kind of rumble over the Bills and they don't have to have that like wild sort of comeback at the very end. Like they take the lead there and they just tell their defense, like, hey, get us one stop and we're going to be fine. And they just were like, you know what? We can get big chunks of yardage. Like we can throw the ball down the field. And I do think like that it's hard to resist that, right? Like if you see openings in the defense and you're like, oh, our tight end can pick up 25 yards right here. But situationally, like knowing that you are controlling the momentum of the game, that you have the strength advantage, that the defense just doesn't have any answer for Henry, who was running for like 10 yards a carry in that half, was kind of like, I think, a bit of a miss. And that's where I think some of it comes back to like, you know what? Maybe your head coach just got to say, like, look, we end up making too many kind of little mistakes in these games. We got to, what's made Patrick Mahomes so good in postseasons is kind of Andy Reid has been like, yo, ball discipline is super important. We're going to take what they give us. We're not going to take deep shots down the field. We're going to just basically like play dink and dunk ball. And I think that's the last evolution of Lamar's like development. I think Lamar is, he and Allen, I think, are the two best quarterbacks in the league. I think they've surpassed Mahomes, but I think that both of
Oh,
them are still.
shade at Burrow. Wow.
Yeah, no, I did put Burrow number one, but I think like Burrow just needs to stay healthy to actually earn that distinction. Maybe Lamb's same is true, but I feel like they need to like evolve. Allen took a little bit more of a step in this involving and like not making the mistakes that
Yeah.
cost you in big moments. But overall, I'm still bullish. Like Justin Tucker was kind of washed. I'm glad that they can get him out of here, and so that him sexually assaulting people allegedly doesn't have to hang over,
Massage
or at
boy.
least exposing himself to people. Yeah, Massage Boy 2.0.
Which, yeah, but they brought
Uh,
it, which They
They did
got
bring
him out
another
of
bad
there.
character,
They got
yeah.
that Mike
They
Green guy in
from
there
Marshall, yeah,
from
that
Marshall,
the
who's really
Ravens are
good.
honestly one of the most full of shit teams when it comes to morality. Like, oh, we don't. If they say things like, if you ever do anything like at all, like violence towards women, there's not a spot for you on this team. And then it's like, well, like we got to give guys a second chance
We
too.
got
And
this guy at number 59. Like
yeah, and he's a
he's
good value for us. Anyway, they
which
re-signed Henry to a
honestly,
2-year deal. Go ahead,
yeah.
TC.
I think
Uh,
like Malachi Starks pairing him on in the back
yeah,
end with Kyle Hamilton, like,
that's a
and then
badass safety.
and then
Crew.
bringing in Mike Green, and then I really liked Emory Jones
Mhm.
from LSU, and they signed Noteboom from the Rams. Like, got a whole kind of a home team discount there on re-signing Ronnie Stanley. Like, they're doing the right stuff. It seems like they're kind of beefing up in the spots they need to beef up in.
They
I think
just
they've
can't.
always done the right stuff. I think it's always been
Yeah,
a franchise that's always been at the
They're
forefront of
smart.
roster building and doing the right things by the players building the team. But it's just there's something about that last kind of quarter of the season that just it just gets wonky in the playoffs, and it's hard to pinpoint it. But
Yeah.
people wanted to blame
I think
Lamar, but it's
they
like
lose. TC, you mentioned this. They lose some games that they shouldn't lose. They play down to their opponents, and that ultimately costs them in the playoffs. Like they're going to Buffalo this past
yeah,
year, as opposed to like when they had Buffalo at home in the regular season, they just absolutely stomped them. And so the reason why the AFC Championship playoff loss to the Chiefs stung is because they did all the things right and got the home playoff game, and then they just didn't show up. And Zay Flowers was fumbling right and left, and so I think like every year you got to start at the bottom of the mountain and climb all the way up to the top, and hopefully, like for them, there's been some lessons learned on the past two like climbs that came up short.
yeah.
I'm going to move on number 2 here on the hot seat again. Patrick Mahomes. Can we talk a little bit about this? I feel like the trap draw has been early, but also not wrong on saying that Mahomes has done playing his best football. It doesn't mean that he's going to be a bad quarterback by any
Yeah,
means, but that
I want to couch that by saying, like, we're not sticking a fork in the guy,
no, fuck no.
but we're on the bleeding edge of
Yeah.
saying, like, it might get late earlier than people imagine.
Part of the
Like,
thing that I really kind of admire Brady was that he just kept getting better. And when people say that Mahomes is the GOAT, I think that sort of makes you a prisoner of the moment. Like, yeah, he might be, but also like he has to keep doing it for another freaking decade. The reason why Brady was so great is because he just kept playing to a standard over and over and over and getting better seemingly like late into his career. I'm going to read a quick little stat here from David Michael Smith of Pro Football Talk. In 2024, Mahomes averaged 7.0 yards per pass, the worst of his career. He averaged 261.4 passing yards a game, the worst of his career. Threw a touchdown on 4.5% of his passes, the lowest of his career. Threw an interception on 2.3% of his passes, the highest of his career. His passer rating was 92.6, worst of his career. And he was sacked on 4.3% of his dropbacks, the most of his career. I kind of feel like the numbers are getting harder to deny. I know that the Chiefs have sort of decided to play a more conservative style of ball, but they were 31 out of 32 teams in explosive pass plays. He's really good at the dink and the dink and the dink. He set highs in completion percentage, but he just doesn't take risks anymore. His advanced stats also are not as good. Like his EPA stats are not as good as Lamar or Josh Allen. A lot of the Mahomes, like kind of slurpers out there will tell you that nothing's changed, nothing's different. But I kind of wonder, guys, like, have we seen the best of Patrick Mahomes in our rearview mirror?
God, I hope so. And it's not like we got a bunch of new weapons down there for him either, right? Like, they
Mhm.
spent their first rounder on the tackle from Ohio State,
I see
and then they
Brittany's got a
beefed up
couple new weapons that she got in the offseason.
defense too. So, yeah. uh, like, and I don't know,
Google
he
it.
just had,
Yeah,
yeah, he just hasn't seemed to want to, like, some of that scheme, right? They were winning, like, Tyreek went to Miami, and I imagine Worthy will take another step forward for him as well. But I think Hopkins was clearly washed last year, and they were relying upon him to. And no Rasheed Rice is big last
yep,
year, right? So you want to talk about another bad guy? Like, just bad guys galore down there. I'm surprised they didn't go after that Mike Green character.
there you go. They're like a magnet for like a
So
flypaper for bad guys.
yeah,
Uh,
I think bottom line, like, we are monitoring the Chiefs, and we're monitoring. We've got an ankle bracelet
Yeah.
on the Chiefs.
12-0 in
generally
one-score
speaking.
games last year. You can't, like, no matter who you are, you cannot just win every single one-score game. Like, regression comes for you eventually.
Yeah.
So you would think that there's a chance that it comes for the Chiefs.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of better money going on the win under for the Chiefs this year because of that, just the regression in one score games. They won 17 in a row dating back to the season, even the season before and the Super Bowl. And it was eventually you just can't keep doing that. I mean, just to even
Got
to
to
go
blow some guys out eventually.
right.
Yep.
And it's 17-0, seven in one score games.
Even if you're
over two
getting every
seasons.
call.
It just I think a lot of it was in the Super Bowl. People kind of saw there was a little bit of, okay, this is how you beat the Chiefs. You got to bully them.
Yeah.
You got to bully them on the interior, and that's just it. And
I think, yeah, but not everybody has Jalen
Right.
Carter.
True, but I think it's like
No.
you just kind of see where you force them to you force Mahomes to kind of have to hold on to the ball longer than he'd want to, and I think that
I
is
think a very underrated part as well is, like, I think Goodell and the league see how tired everybody is of the Chiefs at this point too.
They're ready to
And
move
I
on.
just think
Stop giving them
they're gonna
calls.
get less calls as well. So, which, I mean, looking at BallKnower Nate tweeted this out. Last season, NFL offenses penalized on 5.4% of plays. This is just accepted penalties. That's the highest league-wide rate since 2002. Lowest rate on record was 3.7% in 2020.
Mhm.
So, I think at some point the NFL is going to see, all right, these penalties aren't good for the entertainment value of the game.
Mhm.
Let's either call things looser or, lower that a little bit this season. So
I mean, I know he's kind of an irrelevant figure in some ways, but Kelsey's like regression has been sort of
yeah,
not talked about, and he's talking about, oh, I can't go out like that. I got to have one more year. Like him being no longer an elite tight end, or even like a replacement level tight end, is kind of damning to their offense. Like he was the guy who was an impossible like matchup for a lot of times, and has he even had like a single good game since that Ravens game in the AFC Championship? Like all last year, he was sort of just average, maybe one or something in there. But it's just, I don't know. I'm surprised if the Chiefs are, they'll probably make the playoffs and they'll be a threat. But the Broncos are better, the Chargers are better,
just a
even
much
the
better
Raiders will
division.
get better. Like
the Raiders are definitely going to be better with BallKnower
Yep.
Pete at the helm, and I think
And honestly, the Raiders like match up really well with them between, interior D line and then just kind of physicality and
they're going
all
to
of
run the
that. I
ball
think, and
over
like
there.
and like Noah Gray ain't gonna be the proper replacement for Kelsey either. So
Well, and the other thing is their offensive line was getting older, and they needed to invest in the O line. They signed Jalen Moore, who is the 49ers swing tackle, for like a crazy crazy deal, like a starter deal,
Yeah,
and then drafted Josh Simmons, who I like the player, but he's injured. He's
he's
got
a good
he's
player.
got a
Yeah, he was.
bomb knee.
yeah.
Yep.
So
I mean,
did
Balky would have
they
loved
improve
him.
did they improve the offense? Yeah, did they improve the offensive line that much? I don't think so, and I think the defense is going to fall off a little bit next year.
Yeah. With Rice
Spagnuolo
back,
can only
we'll
do so
see.
much.
That'll certainly help them with.
Yeah.
Although he is an idiot. All right, guys, what the fuck are the Saints doing? We don't really talk about some of these teams that are just generally shitty, but the offseason is a good time to talk about it. Derek Carr, announces he's retiring, kind of ends a standoff with the Saints, and it looks like their quarterback battle will come down to Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shuck, who, just to point out, is 26 years old. He played 7 seasons in college. It's all those years at Oregon and then at the good year at Louisville. Kellen Moore, who, I think we liked previously and sort of felt like he, was going to solve some problems in both Dallas and in, where he was next.
He's in San
Was it with the
Diego.
Chargers? Yeah, at Chargers. So
LA.
this is Kellen Moore's first kind of go around. I see like Sports Illustrated's Connor Orr, who I like a lot, was already predicting that the Saints will have the number 1 pick in the 2026 draft, and that Arch Manning would stay in college to avoid the same fate that his father did, going to the shitty Saints organization. Are there any hope for the Saints? Like, it seems like not that long ago they were, a very like on solid ground franchise, but now they just seem like one of the biggest messes in the league.
What I don't understand is if you're gunning for that number 1 pick next year, or even just a top, a top pick, obviously in 26, why wouldn't you get your cap right
Yeah.
this year? And it seemed like some of the signings that they made, like the bringing back Chase Young or just various dudes, that it's like, man, like, what are you guys doing? And they just keep kicking the can. They just got to rip the Band-Aid off at some point. And like, I know they don't want to bottom out, but this is far worse to me than bottoming out. Bottoming out, there's hope. Whereas this is just like, I mean, Shook is he's a rookie. Trevor Lawrence is younger than him, and he's going into his 5th season in the league. It's crazy.
They're scheduled to have minus $42 million on cap space next season. Going, in a year
It's
where
like,
they should be rebuilding.
It's like, how are you supposed to take advantage of a rookie quarterback, in 26 or in 27 when you're negative in cap space? Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
I mean, a big part of that is the Derek Carr contract, which is like $62 million in the cap, and so. And they're paying Chase Young a lot of money, which is crazy to me. He's the second highest paid player on the team.
How
They have
much did
so
he
many
play
old
last year?
dudes.
I remember when he was out for half the year. I can't pretend that I paid a lot of attention to the Saints, but like I didn't even. How many starts did he even make? I remember, Poosh, you were telling me he was going to maybe be a difference maker for the Niners, and then he was kind of just like a trash late in those playoffs when he was briefly with your squad.
Yeah, I mean the wide nine's not for everybody, I suppose, but I don't know. He seemed to be a little bit more effective for the Saints, just playing in a more traditional role on the end, but I don't know about what he's getting paid. I think the Saints are just, it's Mickey Loomis. Has been there for so long, and he's fireproof, and I think that's just, if you want to look at the reason why this team is, as a TC always, a word that TC uses, moribund, but it's like this franchise is just perpetually mid, and there's no signs of it getting out of it. I mean, like what you look at the roster and you're going like, which one of these pieces is something that you're gonna want to hold on to for the foreseeable future? I mean, they're still paying Tyrann Mathieu, and Ramczyk is good, but he's old. They signed Justin Reed, free safety they signed him from
Which
the
I like
Chiefs.
that one. That was
But
a
he's
good
old.
signing. Like, he's a good player, but like, I don't know how he fits in with a certain
Demario Davis
timeline
is
or whatever.
37 years old.
Yeah. Kelvin Banks, like he's like he's like almost bust proof on the offensive line, it seems like, but
Cameron Jordan is
just
37.
weird.
Like Kamara is 31, and I think he re-upped again. So I don't really get.
And they traded Lattimore to Washington.
Yeah.
I feel
It's just
bad for
very
Chris.
bizarre.
I feel bad for Chris Olev because I think he's a good player, and he's sort of stuck with a very bad quarterback situation. I don't know. Everybody who thought that like Spencer Rattler was going to be the answer when Carr kept getting hurt got proven that like Spencer Rattler just ain't the dude.
Yeah, Olave's a nice piece. It's just again like he's on another contract too, right? He's making $15 million a year. It just seems like they paid everybody like it's going to be this is a team that's going to make a run, and they're missing the quarterback, like the biggest piece of the whole puzzle. It's like, oh yeah, what are you going to do with Spencer Rattler? Like,
I like that Neal guy they got, like the 6th rounder from Kansas. They'll probably use him pretty early on.
I actually didn't mind the draft. Yeah, the draft wasn't bad. It's just it seems like that every year though. It seems like they have a draft that on paper looks cool. Like the players that they select are decent players, and they probably hit on a few of them. But the roster construction makes absolutely no sense, and then they're just kind of this team that has no identity, and they end up with Derek Carr at quarterback. You knew they weren't going to. It wasn't a winner, so
it's
kind of
sick
just spinning
too
your
because
wheels.
it's such a bad division.
Yeah,
just rip the Band-Aid off.
It was fun watching Carr getting screaming matches with his offensive coordinator and his receivers, and I wouldn't be surprised if Carr like plays somewhere this year, as long as that's like allowed once you sort of retire and like they release your rights. I mean, they had that big fight over how much guaranteed money he was owed, and they weren't going to sort of try to seek the 10
which they
million
gave him, the
roster
10 million
bonus.
bonus. Yeah.
But like, if you're the freaking Steelers, you know, and Aaron Rodgers decides not to come play, would you rather have Derek Carr than Mason Rudolph? You know, like that's
I think in that case they go with Kirk Cousins, right? Like they get the Falcons to eat a bunch of that money.
maybe that. I mean, that'll probably be a good deal for both sides there. It'd
Yeah.
be interesting to see if Cousins. I don't know. Penix doesn't quite proven it for me. TC he didn't play that great in the spots that he had, so I know
He
he will hold
didn't.
out hope for you. But
Yeah. But I think you just look at it as like, he got a limited run and
for sure, he did play
this is
well in a
essentially his
couple.
rookie
So.
year. Yeah. Yeah.
Although he
So
is 27 years old as well. Further on the hot seat, much like the Ravens, let's talk about the Buffalo Bills, which we didn't
let's
quite address.
actually
Oh,
let's
let's do a
actually
little.
thank our friends at FanDuel as well. Because
Would love.
just because it's NFL season doesn't mean you can't still get in on all the action. You can bet your favorite Super Bowl winners along with a ton of other fun markets like win totals, player awards, futures, so much more. When you win, you get paid instantly. FanDuel always has exclusive offers. The app is safe, secure, and easy to use, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So just visit fanduel.com/no laying up to join today and make every moment more. Must be 21 or older and present in select states, or 18 and older and present in DC. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sourcebook.com/FanDuel. Or sorry, sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg-help.com. Every time I hear rg-help, I just think Robert Griffin. Robert Griffin help, which he needs some help versus Ryan Clark, I think. So
Amazing that the whole thing, how it unfolded the way it did. Speaking of gambling, Poosh, are you gambling on the Bills this year? It feels like got an easy schedule. Browns, Falcons, Panthers, Saints on their schedule. 84% of their roster is back, one of the highest in the league. We said, in previous years they needed to be more than a dome team, and I feel like they did that. Cook showed he can be a great running back. Although they still did the stupid shit that they always do with Josh Allen, which is like, he's going to pick us up in short yardage. And I'm still baffled that they man the most predictable QB sneaks at such a crucial time against the Chiefs. I mean, they had the Chiefs on the ropes there, and they just,
tendencies, man.
I do
Crazy.
not trust the Bills coaching staff, any of them. We've made a lot of fun of McDermott, but I don't trust the offensive guys either. What say you, Poosh, on the Bills? Are you buying or selling?
I think I'm selling. I mean, I
Yeah.
think we've seen it seems like they're perpetually shit or get off the pot mode, and their legs are asleep because they've been sitting on the pot for 45 minutes
The
trying to do.
worst feeling.
They're stuck on the
Such a
Wordle.
bad feeling.
They're stuck on the Wordle trying to take a dump, and their legs are falling asleep. So it's just a team that just feels like they keep recycling the same thing over and over and over again. And yeah, the coaching staff. I think we were early on McDermott. I think he stinks. Like
Yeah.
this roster and this team with Josh Allen, this team should be so much better than it is. And as for a defensive coach, it just doesn't seem like he brings that much to the table as far as having some sort of really really top notch defense. And if it feels like if you gave Josh Allen a top 7 or 8 defense, that it would be pretty easy for him to get over the hump, or top 5 defense, and that's not. And if you have a defensive coach, why wouldn't you have an elite defense? Otherwise, why is he there? I don't understand it. I do like what they did in the draft. They invested heavily on big interior defensive linemen, and they kind of they did a little bit of offensive. They drafted offensive tackle in the 6th round, Chase Lunt, who's decent, and they
Got
picked
the
a
less
corner.
problematic Bosa in free agency.
That's right.
He's who knows if he's. I don't even know if he's a good player anymore. I don't know if he ever was a good player, to be honest.
Yeah, that kind of feels like just slotting in him for Von Miller, and it's like an oft injured, old D end, and then like
Situational
overpaid
rusher.
for Josh Palmer, which I get like what they're doing. They've got, I think Shakir is probably pretty underrated for what they do, but it just seems like they love those big receivers and they want to kind of try to play bully ball. up there. But yeah, like KV, you said it. It just crushed me. Like when they just kept running that sneak, that same
terrible.
sneak to the left side. It was like, Joe Brady, what are you doing, dude?
It's
It's
horrible.
just bizarre. So
We have one of the
I don't
best
know.
running
I don't
backs
get
in
it.
football. You can't give him like 1 or 2 carries in
Yeah.
that sequence. You know, you need
And
a
it seems
first
like
down.
that's gonna turn into something like that's a situation as well with,
Mhm.
kind of like he hasn't gotten paid yet. It seems like he's a good dude and he's kind of gonna uh play it in a classy fashion, James Cook, but
Mm.
you know, like he's gonna want to get paid here. So
The Ravens and Bills are trapped in a little bit of the same, like really good, but our coaching is just maybe the thing that's like helping us, holding us back. And you can't fire the guy because keeps, how do you fire a guy who keeps getting you like deep into the playoffs? You still like you're sort of trapped in like almost good, which is a tough spot to be in the NFL. All right, guys. How about Kyler Murray? We didn't talk a lot about Kyler last year because he's sort of an irrelevant figure, and so were the Cardinals. But this is year 7 coming up for Murray. Obviously, not someone that we ranked in our top 10 of QBs. I was looking up through his stats. Only 5 games out of 17 did he have a rating over 100 last year, and he threw for 300 yards twice. Uh, is this the last year we see Kyler in Cardinals uni, and what is the future for Kyler? Is he even like a freaking quarterback that you'd want to go out and get and sort of try to kind of rebuild something around?
would you rather have Kyler Murray or Bryce Young moving forward?
That is a great question. A couple of miniature men. uh
I'd, prob-
I
I'd probably say Kyler just because he has a little bit adds a little bit more with his
with the
mobility.
legs, yeah.
Yeah, he can
It's
run.
like I would rather have Kyler than like Tua.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
would too.
same.
Um,
Kyler could be a good fit in Miami. I just can't. My poor guy Mike McDaniels is going to end up losing a job because he's like chained
you want
himself
to
to
talk about him
Tua.
in like a weirdly constructed roster too. Like I think he's actually done a pretty good job with Tua. It also seems like they
Oh,
just
for
need to get a
sure.
better backup. But I
Yeah.
don't know. I really liked what the Cardinals did. It seemed
Yeah.
like they, like Walter Nolan and Will Johnson on that front. Cody Simon I liked him. I think from a like I thought they were going to be better last year.
Yeah.
I think, and it seems like Marvin Harrison 2.0 is just like I expected him to pop a little bit more last year as well.
He was supposed to be
So
the can't miss, the Travis Hunter of the draft, right?
yeah, so that's kind of where I'm struggling a little bit just with how to assess what they've got going on. But man, they like everything's lining up. It's just gonna be a tough division, right?
Yep.
I
I don't
think
know.
I think they're going to be better. I think they're investing heavily in the defense. I think that's Gannon. I think they're just kind of saying, listen, we play in a division with the Rams and the 49ers, and we have to be able to hold them to. We have to be able to play defense, and I think also that's what Seattle's doing as well. They're just investing the defensive coaches, and they're investing heavily in that side of the ball. And then they're saying, listen, if we can be average on the offense and we can keep these games tight, maybe we can steal one at home or split the series with them. The coaching staff is pretty cool. I think Petzing is a good offensive coordinator, and Gannon is doing interesting stuff on defense. Kyler, I
And
don't
Buddha's
know.
fucking awesome.
Buddha's great. He's a
I
top
mean, Josh Sweat's a pretty good
3.
player. Like when he plays, I don't know if I would have given him 50 million guaranteed, but that's the price you got to pay to get an impact player on the edge. So
Yeah, and I think I do think that Marvin Harrison 2.0 is going to have a better year this year. I think they needed somebody to balance the formation with him because there was no real wide receiver
Yeah,
2
Michael
down there.
Wilson's not gonna. Yeah,
Michael Wilson's a good 3. I don't know, he's not a 2, but if everybody knows the balls, they ran the whole offense through Trey McBride. It was like Trey McBride getting a gazillion looks, and
the foie gras treatment.
that's right, just stuffing him. And I don't know. We'll see. I think this year, that Harrison gets a little bit more adjusted to the speed and kind of has a better year.
All right.
Yeah, but yeah, I just don't know what to do with Kyler Murray though. Like it's kind of one of those things of like he's a good quarterback if you've got a good roster. I guess probably similar to like not dissimilar to like Goff, right?
Yeah.
Of like he's or Geno even.
Yeah,
So
might be time for I don't know. It might be time to make a decision though after this year about like, all right, you all in with Kyler? Because
do they have an out
I
push?
think they do. I don't know, but yeah, talk about cap guy Poosh.
I
See,
was gonna say push is hard.
I don't know.
He's
I
my
had to
cap
look at
guru.
okay, we'll fact check that. I know that people get a little bit annoyed when this turns into a 49er wank fest, but I feel
hell
like
yeah.
we have to talk about Christian McCaffrey, who I think
We
Poosh,
get to talk about
we
Christian
get to talk
McCaffrey.
about Christian McCaffrey. Thank you. Poosh, you sort of attributed a lot of the Niners' ills last year to McCaffrey not being available, which what I would say would make him a question mark going into 2025. Is he going to be 100%? Will they be able to keep him healthy? I turn the floor over to you. Will he get Purdy back to be looking like one of the most efficient, best QBs in football with McCaffrey on the field?
Well, thank you. I think I definitely think so. I think last year was kind of one of those weird years where the 49ers going deep into the playoffs 2 years in a row, um, going NFC Championship game, going to the Super Bowl. CMC had the tendonitis on his Achilles, on both Achilles, which was that's not great. Got
Admittedly, not good.
And then he went to
literally not
Switzerland
good.
to
He
get
went to
the
Switzerland
blood
vacation,
spinning stuff,
just
the
a normal,
LeBron
Blood boys
stuff.
just a
right
normal
there.
Swiss
Yeah.
vacation. Came back and played. I mean, if people forget, he played for 3-4 weeks. He didn't look great in the first two. Obviously, he was still kind of getting up to speed. In that Bills game, he pops one and is looking spry in the game. Pops one and then lands snow game, lands on his knee. It was basically like a really, really deep knee contusion, and it wasn't some structural
Why was
issue.
he playing in that? Like, would the Niners really feel like they had a chance to?
Well, they weren't eliminated yet. They still had a chance.
Okay.
They needed to pick one off, and then they needed to beat the Rams. Actually, the Niners were kind of sneaky. If they don't lose, they lost a few in a row right there. They needed to pick one of those games off between the Bills and the Packers, and they lost the Packers. So if they pick one of those off, they kind of are able to sneak into a place where they could actually play in against the Rams. But he bruises his knee, and that puts him out. It wasn't a structural issue, so it wasn't he didn't tear an ACL. He didn't tear. It was essentially like a really, really bad deep knee bruise. So all reports are that he's 100% healthy. He's feeling good. He got married. He's about to be a dad. All these things are going really well, and the Niners invested in. They have Grando. They drafted Jordan Johnson from Jordan James from Oregon, who is kind of like the every down gonna get you like 5 yards, 4 yards, 5 yards. They're all
specialist,
raving about his vision, raving about his toughness. So it's I think I think this year you're gonna see them balance CMC a little bit more. Whereas, in that 2 seasons ago, it was just he's gonna play like 95% of the snaps and just get all the touches, because when he's on the field, it changes the math of the defense. It really forces. That's in Kyle's in the pressers. It's what he says. He's like, listen, it's hard because when CMC's on the field, the defense changes, and the defense has to accounts for him no matter wherever he is in the formation. The defense is changing, and it gives us a massive advantage. So it's really hard to take him off the field and have to go. You're essentially playing with the defense with one arm behind their back when CMC's on the field, and then it's you're playing straight up when he's off the field. And so we'll see. I do think that the Niners are going to be a lot better this year, and I think Vegas and a lot of
course you do.
Well, a lot of the look at the schedule. I think that's the number one thing is they literally have one of the easiest schedules in the history of the NFL. I think is what they're saying. So they're playing. They only play like two. I think two. They have 2 games in the season where they're not favored, and it's Rams away, and I think Tampa Bay away. And in the Tampa Bay game, they have a 3-day rest advantage. So who knows? I think this team can definitely sneak over the 10.5 win mark, and definitely be playoff team, despite the fact that they rebuilding the roster on the fly.
It seems like I'm a little bit worried about just the offensive line, just with they didn't do anything to kind of beef up the McKivitz side of things.
They like McKivitz. I think it's a
I
tough thing. I
know, I
think Kyle
know.
just likes McKivitz. He likes the journeyman. He likes the journeyman right tackle. He just likes a dude that is like. It's just look
And
at the
then how
history of
many
his
more
career.
years does Trent have in him?
Trent has
Yeah.
stated publicly he wants to play. He wants to be one of the guy that plays till he's 40 and plays at an elite level till
Really?
he's 40. Yeah,
He what, 38?
he's stated look at Brady. He's like, I want to be the Brady of tackles.
It's
I want to play in
36 right now,
36.
although he
Okay.
turns 37 in another month or two.
Okay.
So
He signed up
I mean, I love the draft. Got some dogs.
the D line.
Both literally and fit. Yeah, Michael Williams and Alfred Collins looks like a fucking beast. I know Poosh. I know you love that Nick Martin, the linebacker from Oklahoma State. Upton Stout seems like he'll stick his nose in there and compete. Um, yeah, and then are they gonna do more like double tight end stuff? Because they signed
Luke Farrell.
Farrell
Yeah.
and they signed the dude from the Falcons too,
Well,
Dwelly,
yo,
right?
he was a Niner, so we
He was a
drafted
Niner and they brought him
Dwelly, and
back.
then
Yeah.
he went to the Falcons, and we got him. They cut him, I think, and we brought him back. So I what I think, and this is was Ball Knower Nate and his podcast I was listening to, and this is what we saw it last year, which was I get McVay, Shanahan, and I can't remember who the other one was, but there's three teams that are now. Everybody was basically going to running play action, running the Shanny scheme, Kyle scheme, and now it's Kyle and McVay and some of these other teams are going into straight under the center drop back stuff. So they're
Yeah.
going back to like 2000, the early 2000s, where they're putting five eligibles out there, and they're going, okay, now we're just going to go five eligibles and go straight drop back pass game instead of doing play action. Everything's out of play action. So I think what we're seeing here is this kind of like reverse, as the cyclical nature of the NFL, where teams defenses adjust to teams, and their defenses got really fast and really light because teams are going, play action and three wide receivers, and they're doing all these things, and now it's going to go the opposite way, and teams are going to offenses are going to get really heavy again and run the football, and defenses are going to have to adjust to that. And so I think that's what we're seeing here with the 49ers. And I think, yeah, double tights, Luke Farrell, that guy is apparently they paid a lot of money for him. So I think
A lot.
Kyle for like a second tight end. He says it's because he's in a really, really top notch pass blocker and run blocker. So I think, we're just investing in that other guy. I think we're going to see some really cool stuff this year from the McVays and the
I'm
Kyles.
excited. I'm excited for not for us to see it, but for everybody else to see it, right? For people to see how much this scheme can evolve and just how brilliant
Just
Kyle is, and for Kyle to have a full off season.
for
Clearly.
oh my god,
That's
I'm
what's been
so
holding him back.
excited for that. Prophesy.
I mean, time is our most limited resource, right? And he's been able to actually get in the lab this off season.
Thank goodness. Well, maybe speaking of seeing it, TC, maybe we can get out the trap draw and see something in person this year. And if we do, I would think we'd stay in an Omni.
We would. Oh
spot.
God, KVV. That was just exceptional stuff from you. Omni Hotels and Resorts, the official hotel of No Laying Up. Spring is come and gone. Summer golf is here officially. I think we're post Memorial Day. We can say that. There's no better time to start planning your next bucket list golf trip. One course that we want you to put on your radar is the newly renovated Oak Marsh Golf Course up at Amelia Island Resort. I know Solly's actually. I think he's going up there next week, and Bo Welling just redid it. Pete Dye it was a little overgrown. They took out some trees, totally regrassed it. They've got all sorts of sandy areas in there now. So stoked to see that. That'll be an awesome addition to the golf scene here in Jax. And it's on 1,300 acres of oceanfront property in Northeast Florida. Spent $7.4 million and kind of brought the Pete Dye back to it. So whether you're in it for the views, the challenge, or the history, this is one you won't want to miss. And then they just had the NCAA championships at Omni La Costa too. I know we've been watching that the last week or so. Some weird behavior from the Oklahoma State kid, kind of trying to alpha the Ole Miss guy standing on the tee box there. But Gil Hansen, Jim Wagner redid Omni LaCosta a few years ago, and I've been lucky enough to play that. That's a fantastic spot. So hit that up if you are in the kind of Carlsbad, Oceanside area. And they got 13 Omni golf destinations total, 28 courses and short courses at your disposal. What are you waiting for? OmniHotels.com/golf to play the possibilities. KVV, where are we going next? We going to Chicago?
Yeah, let's talk about the Poles assassin, our guy Ryan Poles. Boy, I feel like this to me, like this is a put or shut up year for him. And we've gotten to pick the last head coach, and got to pick this head coach, Ben Johnson, which is good. Like Ben Johnson, I think everybody agrees, good coach. But some things just in general with the Bears are always not good. Came out last month that Caleb's dad, TC, I know you're a big fan of Caleb Williams' dad, told Seth Wickersham that his son did not want to play for the Bears, that he was thinking about sort of pulling an Archie or pulling pulling an Eli or pulling a John Elway and circumventing the draft somehow so he could end up in Minnesota instead. Caleb also said that no one on the previous staff would watch any film with him, which I feel like is an indictment of your guy, Coach Flus, TC. I mean, you're gonna have to own that one.
Ian
Unless
Waldron, who's down here
oh yeah,
in Jax now, I guess,
yeah, it's tough.
helping to dial up plays.
I don't know if Poles is the problem or if Kevin Warren is the problem. Does not feel like the McCaskies they don't have their shit together, so they're sort of sorting out the ownership stuff after Virginia passed away. But there are some good signs that the tight end that they got in the draft I like a lot. This big Ozzie Trapilo kid, the tackle they drafted, he's like Jonathan Ogden big, like 6'8". He looks like a badass. They signed a Joe Thuney, who was Pro Bowl guard. I don't know.
Traded for him.
Excuse me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly. Traded for him, extended him. I don't know exactly like what to expect from the Bears this year. It was really high on my list of biggest disappointments last year. I was watching them just same old shit and watching Caleb be exactly the person that I thought he was when I quickly got tricked into thinking that it would be different. So I turned the mic to you guys. What do you think of the Bears situation? Is there any hope for people like me?
I liked it. I mean, I thought it was a good offseason. I think, I liked the Grady Jarrett's a pro. He's a stud. I don't know how much gas he's got left in the tank, but yeah, a couple of trades, Jonah Jackson, Dooney. I liked Burden. I don't know where exactly he plays or how you play him, but they seem to be throwing a lot against the wall as far as weaponry goes. And I think Loveland that'll get Odunze, a little bit more unleashed this year as well. So
Yep.
I don't know. I think Kevin Warren and his PR lackey Courtney Cronin at ESPN Chicago, they'll spin this however, but I think Warren just needs to get that stadium figured out, right? That's the biggest thing. That's
Yeah.
why he's there. That's not and it seems like Poles. We'll see what happens with Poles. It seems like the ends might justify the means at the end of the day, right? Like at the end of the day, he was the one that made the trade for the heist of the Panthers for that number one overall, right?
Which are you buying or selling with Caleb?
I'm buying what they're doing. I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm definitely, you can sign me up as still highly suspicious of Caleb. Kind of always have been. I do like what they're doing. I think talk about hot seat. If Caleb can't perform with that kind of weaponry surrounding him next season, and they're investing in the offensive line. How many draft picks on offensive draft pick weapons do they need to go get? I mean, look at the wide. I don't know how they're going to fit all these guys on the field. It's like they draft Colston Loveland, they draft Burden, they have Odunze, they still
They
have
might need to start drafting guys like the Spurs or the
DJ
Thunder do, and
Moore.
just stashing them in Europe.
It's like
I would love the NFL would bring back NFL Europe so we could all claim a favorite European team and watch some of our young
NFL Europe
guns
was
pro
sick.
there.
Yeah.
We'll see. I think obviously the coach has got a good scheme. It's proven. I think what they're going to do is do a bunch of line them up in bunches and kind of just let them all be positionless. Essentially, the positionless kind of look where it's you just have a bunch of a bunch of three dudes on the outside, and they all do these kind of crisscrossy things, and it's like go ahead and try and figure this one out.
What
And
are they going to do ownership wise? KVV, are they going to like bring
Yeah.
in outside investors to sell off some equity and create some cash flow here?
So
Or
it sounds like I was, tuning into a little bit of Chicago radio and digging like went deep in my sources like you do, Poosh, when you need to get the actual goods. And it sounds like the NFL really wants the Bears to stay in the family, but the McCaskey family is having some trouble figuring out how to pay the estate taxes. So that's kind of I guess they filed an extension because the estate taxes are sort of in flux. There's 13 children and a couple of nephews have some sort of stake in the team and sort of distributed pieces of the stake. And I think Virginia's like controlling ownership was down to like 21% or something. One of the people who actually was a minority owner, Patrick Ryan, was a sort of a Northwestern insurance guy. He's like in his 80s, but he owns 10% of the team, and he apparently is going to be offered the chance to buy a bunch of more of
Huh.
the team because basically the kids don't have any of the money. Like the McCaskey family's not rich, other than just like the general operations of the Bears. So it's not like they can just pony up money for the estate taxes or to buy more ownership or whatever. So they need to bring in some of that outside stuff. And
And then
Ryan is
how
one of
does it
the
work?
main people.
Like as far as estate taxes, when if you inherited an NFL franchise, how do they do like a fair market value assessment of
That's a great question that I do not want to pretend like I can answer. Maybe if we have some estate attorneys from Illinois, they can hit us up on the Trap Jaw hotline because the value of the franchise has to be around $6.5–7 billion. Now, the stadium deal might sort of make that a little different, but with the way the Commanders sold, that's probably what the asking price is. And so, what value can they list it at? Like, is it for just Virginia's like actual value at the time of her death of what her stake in the ownership or whatnot? I don't know the answer to that. So
what do you think? Because I think there's two. Obviously, there's the Arlington Heights kind of suburban option, and then there's talk of another one that's by the lake with a
yeah,
dome on it. I
well,
mean,
and then Florio mentioned that they could be sharing a stadium with the Bengals.
but sure. I like the lake option, Pooch. I love it when an actual team is located in town. I mean, I don't mind
Yeah.
like you know, we could figure out a SoFi situation where there's a little bit of roof open, but like you don't have to be exposed all the time to the elements. Maybe a retractable roof. I'm sure that's something that they could definitely not afford. But I hate the idea of like driving all the way out to the burbs when the Bears
Yeah.
downtown have been such a sort of part of the NFL for a long time.
It seems like the kind of place too that like it would kill for a Final Four or something like that
Yeah,
as well. Like if you could do, the retractable. So
Bears as a dome team just doesn't quite work with my
yeah,
brain.
I
But
know that.
yeah,
time
Poosh,
evolves.
it does suck a little bit as like if the Caleb if inaccurate Caleb gets bailed out by the coaching staff and this new scheme, does that mean that we have to issue a mea culpa one day?
Well, it's kind of like what happened with Goff. I mean, Goff. I mean,
Yeah.
he looked pretty bad, at the end of his term with McVay, and obviously McVay said this guy's not it. I'm going to let him go. And then Ben Johnson kind of made him look very, very capable. And I think a lot of it was just simplify it. He's hitting his first read all the time. I think that's what he's going to do with Caleb, and it's a possibility that we look dumb, next year because he's got a ton of weapons. They've improved the offensive line, and the scheme is going to be simplified, and obviously, it's going to be better just because of
Yeah.
going from Shane Waldron to Ben Johnson is a massive step up. So
Which I think in all seriousness, like I actually give Caleb credit for that stuff not coming out until the new regime was in place, and then B, like not throwing a temper tantrum last year and his dad not freaking out and everything. Like that could have gone a lot more poorly
True.
last year. So
I think the pieces are in place. We called that he was going to be a malcontent and throw a temper tantrum, and his dad was going to be an issue. And privately, it seems like it was true, but it just didn't like affect. It didn't come out in the outside world.
yeah,
And
it
I'll say
could have
this:
got yeah.
I appreciate that Caleb didn't throw Wickersham under the bus and be like, "That's a lie. I never said that." He just owned it. It was
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, like that was how I felt before, but when I came here, I changed.
Yeah.
Changed my mind, and I wanted to be here." And that's about the best. He could have said it, kind of spun it for his own way. It's like, yeah, I felt that way once, but not anymore.
That would have been the malarkey. Uh,
Yes.
you know.
How about Trey Hendrickson? Is he going to sit or is he going to cave? I said it's getting personal between him and ZT. I'm sorry that Randy's not here to stick up for Trey. Who TC? I think you believe he's a malcontent, even though
I'm
I
not a
think we.
Trey guy at
Okay.
all, but also like, I think he's fluffed his sack totals. A lot of empty stats there.
Wow,
He's on the wrong side of 30.
they're bad on
Uh,
defense though. How do you fluff your sack totals on a bad
well, in
defense?
some
Seems like
games
there's
they
one
were
guy to
out
block.
of, or just I don't know. I just don't think that I'm just he's just not my guy. I'm just not a
Okay.
huge fan.
Okay.
I'm not a huge fan of the guy they drafted though either. That Shamar Stewart. He just
Yeah.
ball knower Nate and I had to talk about him on the pre-draft pod we did, which he's just like, man, like, does he just not know how to play football? Like he's like all the ingredients are there, but like it's not a
Sure.
coherent recipe, you know?
Yeah. Push, any Bengals thoughts?
Yeah, I think we just discussed briefly before the pod. They're paying all these guys on offense record contracts. Jamar Chase makes an insane number at wide receiver, and they just don't want to give it up to the defense. They don't want to. They don't want to pay these guys. I get it doesn't really make a ton of sense to pay a guy on the wrong side of 30. You know, crazy money. But if he, is he a foundational piece? Are you trying to win a Super Bowl? Probably. Are you going to be able to replace him? Moneyball sacks next year? I don't think so with the same value. Will he take a shorter deal? A 2-year deal, a 1-year deal? You could they franchise him? I mean, there's
Which that's the thing. It doesn't seem like he's got a ton of leverage.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um, just play the deal out and
I
then,
think that's what they're doing. They're just going to stretch it out and just say like, listen, you can either
yeah.
get
Yeah.
fined or play. He still
But
have
I
one more
also like,
deal, one more year on the deal? Is that what it is?
yeah, I think it's just this year. And I think it was a weird free agency period. I know they brought in Al Golden to run the defense. Sounds like a much simpler scheme.
Yep.
Maybe that unlocks, the secondary a little bit more to play a little bit more freely. But I don't know. I think the T deal, I didn't, I know they got to keep Burrow happy. The T deal just, that one concerns me a little bit of he's been hurt a little bit the last few years. So
Mhm.
we'll see. I think, it's truly like I think shit or get off the pot time for Zach Taylor.
Yeah.
If they don't win the division this year, or at least make a pretty serious run in the playoffs, I think it's time
Gotta
to
go.
cut bait. Yeah.
Justin Fields, who I believe is patient zero for the ball knowers. Basically, the reason that I was asked to join a text thread with you guys was because Poosh and I were trying to stick up for Justin Fields, or trying to say that he had elite tendencies. TCU and Randy were very down on Fields, basically saying that he did not know how to play football. History has kind of proven you and Randy right, TC, but Justin Fields gets a fresh start with his third team in the New York Jets. Looks like he will unquestionably be the starter there. Gets reunited with Garrett Wilson, who played with in college at Ohio State. Obviously, one of the better receivers in football. What do we think of Fields? Is there any hope for him to sort of pull a Michael Vick and kind of I guess reboot his career as more of a thrower than a runner?
I like it. I think I'm pro Fields at this point with the
Hell
Jets. I
yeah.
think it's a good lottery ticket for them. Not necessarily. I think it was kind of square peg round hole last year. Of
Mhm.
They wanted him to really play within the system last year in the Steelers, and it seems like he's more of a, hey, just let him go play football and cook a little bit more similar to maybe a Baker. He's got some weaponry up there, like the Mason Taylor tight end signing. I know he's got. Sounds like he and Garrett Wilson are hitting it off again. rekindling the Ohio State connection there. Offensive line should be pretty good. They spent another. They got Membu, I think the guy from Missouri. So, and then just stability up there too. Seems like Aaron Glenn's kind of a no bullshit kind of coach, and
Basically
yeah,
told
so
Aaron Rodgers to his face, like, I don't want you here.
yeah,
Aaron Rodgers making a big deal about how he flew cross country on his own dime to just be told to his face that he wasn't wanted. I just thought it was a good moment by the Jets after basically like kowtowing to every need of his to basically be like, you know what, fuck off. Like, we don't need you back here anymore.
yeah. I don't know. I think it'll be interesting. I think seeing as what happened with the Falcons with Ulbricht's kid and Ulbricht, during the draft, it doesn't seem like he's maybe the most serious guy either from last year. So I think it was just the right call to clean house and stuff. Maybe Fields is a bridge guy to the future, but I would say, like, man, if I was them, like, I would almost maybe even make a trade for another, like, highly mobile dude. Like, I know they've got Tyrod as their backup, but that would be the one concern, right? Is, like, can he stay healthy, kind of run and gunning it?
On that turf.
See, maybe Ulbricht's
Yeah.
kid learned from Woody Johnson's kid, and that's where he learned to cause mayhem. It's the bad influence on him.
What was
That's
that
why
kid's
he's
name?
Brick, right?
Brick.
Wasn't it Brick
Brick.
Johnson? Sick.
Yeah.
All right, guys. How about
Poosh, you
Poosh? I don't know
buying?
any Jets thoughts. You buying?
I think I am buying. I'm back in. I'm always buying on. We just talked about the same thing with Caleb and Goff, with this Johnson scheme, and this, they hired Tanner Engstrand, he's the offensive coordinator, straight out of the passing game coordinator for the Lions. So he's running Ben Johnson's scheme. You assume that it would be something similar, which is, play action, one read, simplify, run the football, do the things, make it easy on the quarterback. It's about timing. I think that's the biggest thing. We see when you watch Jared Goff, that offense just always felt in rhythm. It's a very rhythmic offense. It's like the ball's out real fast. It's in the flats real fast. It's to the first read real fast, and it's like hasn't really been Justin Fields' game. So if you can get him to do that, maybe we do see, something interesting. If he can't do it, then I think, we're just kind of, that's just who Justin Fields is, and he's just going to kind of be this kind of interesting backup for the rest of his career that can kind of come in and probably win you some games, but he's never going to be the franchise guy. I guess I'm buying though.
Okay, they're at least interesting. They're more
Yeah.
interesting than they were with Rodgers when they were just like, a comedy of errors. What about an Eagles hangover? Eagles, I saw where Barkley was saying he thinks they're one of the top 5 teams of all time last year, that they were just that good and that dominant. Don't know if I believe that, but obviously the Eagles were pretty great at the end of the year. Made us look a little silly after we were sort of down on Sirianni early when they started 2-2. TC, you're all in on Sirianni now. He's your guy.
Extended.
What do we think?
He got
What do we
extended
think
too.
about?
Yeah.
Yeah, just got extended.
Yeah.
They're involved in some of those religious real estate scams I saw. They're doing all that stuff, but that's neither here nor there. What do we think about the Eagles? Are they going to run it back? Another good draft for them as always. Like, they just keep, getting guys who are good fit pieces for them. What do we think? Lost a lot of guys on defense.
Yeah, lost a lot of guys on defense. They got Jahad Campbell, which is that seems like pouring gasoline on this thing, and just, kind of a ball of, like, just a wrecking ball of energy.
Yeah.
There, re-signed Zach Bond. I think that's
Yep.
the other one that, I think the
Kobe Dean to
Becton.
be healthy. Brought,
Yeah.
he was hurt all at the end of the postseason.
Yeah. Brought in Uche, Aguilari. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Terrace Marshall's an interesting one. Big wide receiver. But yeah, overall, I mean, I think I like the safety they got from Texas too. Like, just seems like they're, keep loading it up on strengths. Tush push back. Huge. And obviously Big Dom's still there too. So
Thank you.
you got it sounds like Ballknower coach. Is that Ballknower?
Ballknower Koji is looking for me. Yeah. He's wandering the halls right now. I can He's outside my door
Yeah.
banging, so we'll see.
No, I think I'm all in. I'm all in on the Eagles. I don't know what the hell to think of the Giants up there.
Sure.
Commanders are probably it seems like they're kinda going all in. I don't know how I feel about that. And then the Cowboys seem like kind of a dumpster fire. So,
Yep.
I gotta say something about the
what
Eagles.
streak they
I think everything's pointing to them being really, really good again. I think if you just look at it from you know the draft. I like the draft. Obviously, went their way again, and
Mhm.
Howie is the best at what he does. But I will say this: it's really hard to do it again, and it's really hard to stay healthy. And I think that's the biggest thing with
Yeah,
that team is injury luck is a big part of getting to the Super Bowl and winning the Super Bowl.
for sure.
And obviously, you saw what happened with the 49ers last year and the Lions, where injury luck went the other way for them. And it's just a similar type of regression. You played a lot of ball. They played a lot of ball in the last 3 years. And a lot of those veteran guys like Lane Johnson, those guys have been, and their offensive line has been relatively healthy for the entire stretch. Just saying, it's a lot of
Sure.
football. And I think
You're
that
a you're a lane injury or a high ankle sprain from Saquon from suddenly like going, 4-6 over the first 10,
and I
and then
also
you're
think
like fighting uphill.
AJ Brown AJ
totally
Brown
new offensive staff too.
we
Yeah.
saw what happened 2 years ago when AJ Brown went down. That offense looked very, very different with when they
Yeah.
had to rely solely on
Your
Devontae.
physical receiver too.
Yeah, it just
Yeah.
changed the balance of the offense. So I just think it's a good team. It's a really well built roster. Obviously, Trader Vic's at the helm on defense. That's a big, he's a bad boy, but we'll see. We'll see. I think that's if they don't have a year. I think that's where you look is just the injury luck kind of catching up to them.
And you got a whole new offensive staff.
Yeah.
Kellen Moore leaving, and you've got, they brought Kevin Patullo. What they got?
But there was an
Parks,
in-house
Frazier,
was it in-house
Leffler.
hires essentially though, right? They just kept a lot of the same kind of
Yeah,
some guys.
yeah, just bump some guys up, but like Nussmeyer left too. So I don't
Yeah.
know. See what
Yeah.
happens.
Guys, let's talk a little bit of
Because
draft. Oh, go ahead.
Fields is potentially a malcontent
Yeah.
there. So
Guys, let's talk a little bit of the draft. Tell me something you loved about it, something you were not certain on. You can go big or you can go small, whatever. Poosh, I'll start with you. What's your sort of big grade and some picks you liked?
Well, needless to say, I really like the Michael Williams pick by the 49ers. But we won't
Of
go too
course.
deep into that. I love the pick. The guy's a stud. I did like the Jihad Campbell pick to the Eagles. I thought I just saw him falling down the draft board, and when it came to the Eagles, I said it out loud. I was like, they're going to take Jihad Campbell here, and it made a lot of sense because they had a need at off
Yeah.
ball backer, and he's just this. He's like a 6'3" like freak, and I think we in the post draft we mentioned it as well. Just really like that pick. I actually really liked the Will Campbell to the Patriots pick. I thought
Yeah.
that was a smart pick, investing in a guy that's just has an attitude, is just a football player,
Yeah.
protecting your guy. And, that offensive line was absolutely shitty. And so investing in that, I really like what the Patriots did in the draft for the most part. We'll get to see what TC's boy does over there with an actual quarterback and, see if he can put something together.
TC, any draft things that stood out to you?
Oh, I liked both the Oregon guys that went first round. I thought Kenneth Grant to the Dolphins.
Yeah.
I don't know what the Dolphins are doing, but I like that. I like Tyler Warren to the Colts.
Yeah.
It seems like they're kind of going to try to just
Your Colts
run
are
the.
on notice. All right.
Oh, for
We've
sure.
been debating the
Yeah.
Colts for years.
No, I think the Colts are off notice. They just need to get their shit together. And then who knows what's going on.
Is Richardson gonna? I mean, that Jones Richardson quarterback battle
Yeah,
to
the
me is
Vanilla
like
Vic.
two
Yeah.
broken prospects. This is very funny. They should just run the
Uh, option.
option. They got
I mean,
all
I
that
guess like
speed with
bring in a
Jones.
really good tight end because
Yeah.
the tight end room was barren there. Weirdly, I really like the Egbuka to the Bucks.
Yeah, I like that.
I think that's who knows how much more Mike Evans has has in the tank, and then Godwin's, kind of on these series of 3-year deals. But even the Steelers getting like Derek Harmon, that's just the Steelers dude going strength to strength there. You know what I hated? Matthew Golden, the
Mm.
Texas guy, he's gonna wear number 22
No, I don't like that at all.
with the Packers. That's just
Disgusting.
atrocious. Yeah.
Ugh.
What
First time in
else?
25 years the Packers have drafted a receiver in the first round, I believe.
Yeah. I like what the Browns did. I think Mason Graham and Swessinger, Quinshawn Judkins, I liked Fannin.
Yeah.
Obviously a pretty crowded QB room there with 5 guys, but you might as well throw a bunch of shit at the wall, see what stinks. Or
I don't
see
know
what
How are they
why.
going to
sticks.
break up reps? How are they going to break up reps for that many guys? Like,
I don't know why you'd keep picking around
Yeah,
with
right.
2 young QBs and Flacco. Like, you got your veteran guy who you like and familiar with, and who actually had success with previously before it all kind of came apart. Like, just roll with Flacco and then have the 2 young
Yeah.
guys battle it out for the backup, and then other guy can be the clipboard holder.
I really
Sorry.
liked what the Texans did. I think
Okay.
I like Higgins, and then I like his teammate, Jalen Noel, both from
Mhm.
Iowa State. Just throw a couple things at that and, see what sticks. They got the big kid from Minnesota on the offensive line. Like, they got cheaper. I figure, like, all right, like, if our offensive line sucks with, the guy they traded to the gas mask guy. What's gas
Tunsil,
mask?
Tunsil.
Bong
Oh,
guy.
Tunsil,
Tunsil's
yeah.
guy name. Yeah, yeah. Like, if it's gonna suck with him, you might as well get a lot cheaper and a lot younger and just kind of go from there, right?
Yeah.
And then
I
my Jags, man.
yeah.
I gotta throw my Jags in there. That's kind of the thing. I think there was a ton of good, like, good wide receiver value down the board too. Like, I think
Yeah.
the like that Pat Bryant guy that the Broncos got, like him a lot. Broncos are getting really, really interesting,
Yeah.
I think.
They
So,
are. I still don't know that I'm a buyer of Bo Nix, but I don't know. Obviously, they're making it work with him, so that's they're pretty efficient in terms of like completing passes, at least.
yeah. Poosh, what'd you
I
think
just
of Ball's draft?
I thought it was very
June.
Baugh. I mean, I thought it was very Baugh. I mean, he invested in just massive dudes and like football players, which is like Harbaugh just likes dudes that are just like football heads like him. He wants kind of like psychos and like big guys. I think that's like what he really just like. He's an old school guy. It's like he wants to look at a guy and be like, "That's a football player. Like that is a big fucking dude that is just going to hold up a lot of space and like, you know, intimidate you and look good at coming off the bus." So I do like what they did. I think they maybe went with Hampton. It was like maybe a smidge. I didn't know if they needed to take a back that early
Yeah, kind
in
of
the
a deep
draft.
back draft too.
Yeah, with having so much depth. I mean, people will like that pick, but because he's probably going to be a really good player. But I just think it maybe there was other things you could have done there in the first before picking a running back. I haven't talked to him yet. I need to talk to him. We need to get on the horn and kind of just
yeah.
see where he's going this year. I don't know.
What'd you like, KBV?
I want to shout out the Giants. I think Abdul Carr's good prospect for sure. Definitely like one of the 5 best prospects in the draft. Obviously, that's why he got picked 3rd, but could be like a really game changer. And I don't love Jackson Dart, but like if you're gonna take a risk on a QB that you like, get him like late in the first round, get that 5th-year option, and the Cam Scatabo. I just love the way that dude that
That's
plays
sick.
football. I think there could be some weird ass game where he gets like 35 carries. Like he's a throwback running back. Giants. I don't know if the regime will be around. My guy Dable will be able to coach up Jackson Dart for 2 more years. Who knows? This is kind of hey man, you're either a coach or you're not. But I thought they put together a solid draft. Like I
I like
think
Dart.
that's
Yeah.
I think they didn't get sucked into like, hey, if Cam Ward is not our guy, then we're not going to trade up to the top spot. Maybe the Titans would have even listened, but they didn't get sucked into anybody else. They just were like, you know what, here's a value pick for
Did they
Dart late in
need
the
did they
first.
need to go back up into the first to get Dart though? I think it was the
That's a
big
good question.
criticism.
They could have maybe stuck around and said, let's get him. Maybe they must have suspected that somebody else wanted him, and they felt like he was a steal and like get that 5th round option.
You know who had the worst draft for me was
Who?
Tron's Falcons. Just
Oh
another
God, yeah.
atrocious, just
Amen.
another like
They're no longer
absolute,
my Falcons.
just absolutely brain dead operation down there. Like I don't understand what they were doing. Taking
I mean,
James
AB's just
like
yeah. Well, trading
Jalen
up
Walker
to
falls into their lap, which was a nice
yeah.
interesting pick. But then they trade back up into the first round to get James Pierce, who's like a
Which
light
James Pierce could
body,
be very good, but he's
but they're
potential
light. They're both
malcontent.
light guys. I mean, they're like light
Yeah.
body dudes, and it's like, are you?
I
Look at the
loved they got two safeties that I really liked. I love Xavier Watts from Notre Dame, and then they got uh that guy Billy from Oklahoma who's a stud too. So I think like I don't know, it seemed like they wanted to attack the defense and get it done, but man, I just don't know. It's just such a weird roster and I
But
don't know. I just don't know
they gave
what
up a
Fontenot's
first.
doing.
They gave up a
Oh,
first
totally.
to come back
In
and
a
get
much
Pierce.
stronger draft to go all in on it's bizarre. I've
They gave
no
the
idea what they're
Ram, and
doing.
it goes to the Rams, of course. And so the Rams are going to have 2 first-round picks next year for moving
Yeah.
back. And
Yeah.
it was just a
No, the
puzzling
Rams
move.
are
Rams are starting to
all
rebuild.
I mean,
Rams
I
are
think they already I think they're already rebuilt.
I know. I'm
Right?
saying like they're reaching that point now where they've gotten through that we traded away all our picks. Now they're starting to get back those picks, and they've like hit on their guys that they did pick. Like, man, the Rams. I thought the bill was gonna come due, and it just didn't really. And now they're
Well, and they
freaking.
hit on Fisk and they hit on, Verse, who's a stud. And I like the Terrence Ferguson pick.
Adams might
More
have Adams might have a Moss type year from like, hey, I'm finally out of this shithole of like various like bad teams, and now I'm gonna turn it on again and be the
or
dude.
Puka might have a gigantic year.
Well, they both, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Who knows what, the future holds as far as quarterback goes for them, but I think they'll figure it out. I think Patriots it seems like they got some high floor guys, like you say, with Campbell and Travion Henderson, and Kyle Williams is really nice from Washington State too.
Yeah.
I think the Lions as well. Like I know everybody was a little bit confused by the trading up to get that Tesla guy, but I think the
Tesla.
Tesla, but like they like their dudes. They've got very particular kind of
Yeah, I like the draft.
but like Tate Ratledge, like getting ahead of they're probably going to lose one or two dudes, or their O line's going to get really really expensive after this coming season. And then I love Tyleik Williams. I think that's just that's a football player.
That's a super
interior
Lions
D-line.
pick.
Yeah, exactly. So
guys, let's bounce a little bit around as we wrap up here and do a little lightning round. I'm just going to throw a couple league things out there and get your short. You don't have to go too deep on this, but just kind of get your takes. Number one on that list is the tush push not being banned. Do you care? Are you outraged? Is it irrelevant? What do you think?
I'm kind of outraged. Even as a big Eagles fan, I'm still outraged. I think it's clearly against the rules.
Yeah. Poosh, you're an old rugby guy. Come on.
I'm surprised. I mean, I'm surprised. I mean, I don't think it's. I'm don't know necessarily if it's against the rules, but it's definitely kind of against the fun of the game. It's like
Yeah.
it's an unstoppable play. So I was listening to a guy that I listen to, Guy Haberman, does like Niners centric pods, and he was saying how he thought it was for sure going to get eliminated because it's non-competitive, and the NFL is really about the entertainment product of everything, and it's like taking a play that is non-competitive where it just every single time it happens, it's going to happen. There's no drama there, and it makes kind of one team have a very massive advantage in short yardage situations, but they didn't. So I think it seems like the Packers were the team that were trying to get it outlawed, and then they I guess they pulled out at the last second or got voted down or whatever happened. I think they were saying that
They were 2
Jeffrey
votes
Lurie
short, you know?
gave some sort of impassioned speech about how incredible,
Wet dreams
like
and
a wet
whatnot,
dream,
yeah.
like a wet dream, and everyone had to like tamp him down and be like, "Yo, dude, chill out on the wet dream stuff."
Shout out to
Uh,
Wickersham again for that reporting, yeah.
yes, yeah. So, you know, it is what it is. I think it would have been interesting to see what would happen if they did ban it, and then to see how effective Jalen Hurts became as a quarterback without that play, or how they would try to circumvent it. But we'll see. He gets another year with it at least.
Yeah. Tebow missed his calling. Could have been a
Yeah.
tush push guy way back in the day. I just don't like that. Like you're not getting there under your own power, right? Like that's kind of an essential part of like sports, right? It's like you can block for a guy, but then it's his legs that has to churn him forward over the line, not like him getting shoved in the back and driven forward. And I don't know like what exactly the answer is, but I just don't, you can't stand on a guy when you're trying to block a field goal. So why can you push a guy in the back when you're trying to get over the line? How about number 2 here? Jim Irsay passing away. Kind of a surprise, but not exactly someone who's been without his demons or been in particularly good health. What do we think about Jim going away? I mean, certainly a better man than his father. As we detailed on the Owners Pod many years ago, his father was one of the all-time villains in the NFL. But without Jim speaking up, the Dan Snyder might still own the Commanders. He kind of went rogue and basically said that there might be a vote to oust Snyder, and that was enough to kind of push the league forward. Will we miss Jim Irsay?
TBD. I mean, yeah, like I think as a human being, yeah, it seemed like he
Sure.
was Reggie Wayne had a great presser the other day of just like what he meant to people in the organization and stuff. Uh, I had some funny Jim Irsay stories from when I worked at the Ritz Carlton. They would have owners meetings there. Funny guy, but yeah, I mean, I think we'll see what happens. Like, who kind of takes over the franchise if the daughters take over it and Ballard gets canned or what. But
Looks like
it's
the
kind of been
daughters
a
will
model
share
of
control.
stability over the last however long. So we'll see what happens. It's certainly, certainly one of the more unique franchises in the league.
Poosh, any Colts thoughts or just ready to move on?
Ready to move on. I don't have too many Jim Irsay thoughts. I mean, I thought he was kind of an interesting character. He had a funny Twitter account and was kind of always trying to do like fan engagement stuff through Twitter, which I always thought was kind of like different, at least, from an owner, so seemed like an interesting cat. Didn't really know too much about him. Obviously the Colts are kind of a far, one of those teams that I don't pay a ton of attention to, but
You'll grind
interesting
Colts
guy.
tape.
And I'm not a huge Colts grinder, no, but ever since Luck
Uh,
left, so
yeah. Guys, how about just real quick, Jeff Ulbrich's son pranking Shadur, costing the Falcons $250,000 and $100,000 for Ulbrich. TC, I couldn't help but think about what would your father do if you and Neil cost him $250,000 from some dumbass teenage prank that you pulled?
Yeah, he'd be pissed. I mean, he would, he would put us on a payment plan,
I would think
probably.
so.
Yeah, what a just like thinking back to all the other bullshit that the Falcons have gotten themselves into with regard to the tampering with Cousins and how sloppy they were around all that stuff, piping in fake crowd noise,
Yeah.
the entire Mike Vick thing, Bobby Petrino, like Arthur Blank. At what point does Arthur Blank stop being like shouldn't be considered one of these model owners
Yeah.
in the league, right? Like I know he got a stadium done and that was a big thing, but otherwise it's just been embarrassment after embarrassment after embarrassment. Like they had the Calvin Ridley thing. They were misreporting injuries around Bijan Robinson.
The Bobby
Um,
Petrino stuff, like
yeah, it's insane.
one
Like,
embarrassment after the
and
next.
this guy's picking the next PGA Tour commissioner. Like he's in charge of the PGA Tour CEO. It's crazy
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
So, he does have the Atlanta Drive Championship
Thank
to
goodness.
kind of hang his hat
Jeff,
on.
I don't
Jeff
think it'll ever be. Go ahead, Push.
I was gonna say Jeff Ulbrich. It's kind of a close to my heart because he played for the University of Hawaii,
There you go.
Rainbow Warriors, and was a linebacker there in their kind of heyday when they were a pretty competitive team. And then he played for the 49ers. And actually, Kyle was trying to get him to come over as his defensive coordinator last season instead of Sorensen. And he said, and it got blocked by Saleh because it's a parallel move. It was not us. You can't interview if it's not a promotion. So interesting kind of ripple of butterfly effect there, where he ends up going down to Atlanta and becoming the DC down there, and now his we miss out on having his derelict son doing shitty things. Thank God. So I'm just glad we missed him.
Yeah, we've got this crazy defensive coordinator thing going with Steve Wilkes is now with the New York Jets.
Yeah.
And then you've got Ryan Nielsen, who sounds like he was just a disorganized disaster, just wanting to blitz every play. He's now with the Bills as a senior defensive assistant. And then you got Saleh back with the 49ers, which I think is a hugely underrated move.
Yeah.
That should yield massive dividends.
Defensive coordinator is kind of like the fixer of the NFL. Like you just come in, you bring in a fixer,
the Band-Aid,
or the wolf, in Pulp Fiction. Like comes in, it's not meant to stay very long. Just teaches up discipline, clean some brain matter off the carpet, and move forward. Guys, is this next year the year that Jaden Daniels gets into the top 4 of our QB rankings? Is anybody, if we've kind of knocked Mahomes for a little bit? I know we're all high on Daniels, but kind of wonder what we can expect in year 2.
I kind of am going the other way. I'm high on Daniels, but I kind of am expecting a little bit of a regression. I think that in year 2, it's really tough to kind of continue a year where the expectations are so high for him. I think because of what he did on his rookie year, it's really, really hard to go up another level from that. So I don't necessarily know if that team, now that people have tape and they kind of understand, they've seen the offense, they kind of know what's going on a little bit, they'll be able to adjust. I think there's going to be a little bit of a regression in DC this year, and I think that's my prediction. I don't think it's going to be because Daniels is a bad quarterback, but I think you saw it with Stroud. I think, in year 2, the offensive line was overperformed for what they were last year at the Commanders. And I think if they have issues there, that could be one reason why you kind of see a regression, which is just him running for his life out of the pocket and not being able to operate really.
I don't know. I think everybody's calling this regression pretty. Like that seems to be the majority. It's like everybody's like, oh yeah, they're definitely going to regress this year. They got 2. I think the offensive line is going to be as good or better than it was last year. With you got Connerly, he seems pretty plug and play, kid from Oregon, and then Tunsil, get him in there and keep going with strength there. And then I think Debo with Scary Terry that's a pretty dynamic duo there. So, obviously Zertz is old, and then, but we'll see what they've got kind of depth wise as far as receiver and stuff, but they should be able to run the shit out of the ball.
Keep in mind, Lamar won the MVP in year 2. He didn't play a ton like Daniels did in year 1, but
and they've got some continuity too. Like Cliff's back for more offensive coordinator stuff as well. So,
guys, how about George Pickens being traded to the Cowboys? TC, I know you love George Pickens.
Maybe the ultimate malcontent. I mean,
truly,
it's just amazing to see like what the Steelers have done between Antonio, CT ESPN, Antonio Brown, Pickens.
They're so good at
Deontay Johnson.
Deontay Tom. Yeah,
They're so good at getting edge rushers and wide receivers, and their wide receivers eventually all go crazy. But man, those are the 2 positions they just scout.
But can you blame them? Since Roethlisberger
who was the guy
left,
that couldn't stop getting suspended?
Martavis Bryant.
Martavis Bryant. Yes. Yeah. That guy just couldn't stay off the weed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just this long lineage, but I don't know. I think it makes sense for both teams. It's kind of the rare. I think that, weirdly, I think the Cowboys kind of had a good offseason. Like
I think hurts, but yeah.
like Pickens is going to have to be on his best behavior if he wants to get any sort of a second contract here. And then you've got I'd like the draft. You know, figure out what to do with Parsons as far as the deal there. But I don't know. It just seemed like, hey, you know what? It's kind of shut up or put up kind of time for Zach or for
Yeah.
Dak too. And it seems like Dak's the guy that's going to try to like he's the leader in that locker room, and he'll keep Pickens in line, right?
For
He
sure.
has to.
It's just more fun when the Cowboys are relevant, and they're interesting.
Relevant and volatile.
I did like
Yeah,
the
that
draft.
is
I did
fair.
like their draft. I thought that the draft was pretty good. That maybe a reach for the guard, the plotter at guard, just a massive human, road grader type, kind of in that old school Dallas guard
Yeah.
mold. But Siobhan Ravel was a really nice pick. They got really good value there, and Azaraku is a good third down. He's a little bit of a light body, so I'm not sure if he can stay on the field for 3 downs, but he'll be a good pass rush. He's a good pass rusher. So they're and then they took Jay Toia, the nose tackle from UCLA, in like the 5th or 6th, and that was I think the pick that I was like, you're always waiting for Dallas to not invest in the interior defensive line. For some reason, they think that that's just something that they don't need to invest in. And every year they get the ball gets run up their ass in the playoffs, or whenever it is the meaningful games happen. And they finally invested on the interior. And I was like, wow, okay, something's changed there. Maybe it's TC's boy Shoddy. But we'll see. I don't know. It seems like maybe there's been some sort of influence there as far as roster building goes to change it up a little bit. So
It's a pretty. I mean, they sent Miles Sanders, Javonte Williams. They drafted Blue, the kid from Texas. Like they've got kind of a
Brian Schottenheimer is such a funny coach, though.
it's hilarious.
super funny.
So
And Flus.
like how could you not?
Yeah, and they got Flus.
That's true, but how could you not have those? Like how you have the chance to get Bill Belichick, and you'd rather roll with Brian Schottenheimer. Like just put your ego aside and let Bill have. Like Bill could make this team, I would think 11-6 pretty easily. But who knows? Guys,
They've got a ton of reclamation guys. Like they traded
Sure.
for Kyer Elam. They got Kenneth Murray. They got Dante Fowler. Don't forget about the guy they traded for from the Panthers last year. The kid from Mississippi, the wide receiver. Like that's a pretty deep skill position deal. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Guys, this might be the last chance for us. We only got a few more left here to talk about Aaron Rodgers on the BallKnowers. Is Aaron Rodgers going to end up with the Steelers? He basically said, I got no interest in playing for the Saints. So it's kind of Steelers or nothing at this point. Is Aaron Rodgers worth kicking the tires on for one more team?
I say absolutely. I think I'm all in on him going to the Steelers. It sounds like some of those guys are starting to get a little bitchy up there. Who was it yesterday that was saying like, hey, you got to sacrifice to be here and all that. But,
Cam Hayward?
Yeah, no, it was I think somebody in the secondary. But I don't know. I think overall it's by far their best option.
It is.
Right?
Yeah. You would think so. I mean, at least who knows if I would love to see him and Tomlin interact for a year. Tomlin, by the way, the longest tenured coach now in North American sports after Greg Popovich retired. Said TC is like he's running a marketing agency there, not really concerned with success as much as just sort of like keeping head above water and spending the money in front of him.
It's like mid-level
success,
right? Like they're not, they're not gonna have a losing record, but weirdly, Aaron Rodgers is probably their best chance to win.
Yeah.
Right?
Probably. Yeah. At least like win like in the playoffs. If that's the whole goal is to like win playoff games. Like I would think he would be their best option.
I do think it's they got rid of their best wide receiver as well.
I mean, Mason Rudolph is not that dude.
No.
So
and then DK Metcalf, it's just
DK,
weird stuff going on there. And then even just letting both the quarterbacks walk. Who's going to play for the Giants? Is it going to be Jameis or is it going to be Mr. Unlimited?
I think it's.
I bet you they go with Mr. Unlimited, but I really hope that Jameis gets I mean, just give Jameis a full year. This
Like,
is the pure joy of
yes.
him in the New
Jameis
York
with the
media.
New York media. I was gonna say Jameis with
Oh,
the press up there is gonna be incredible stuff.
well.
Yeah.
Guys, anything we missed in closing here? I'm excited for Wickersham's book, American Kings, to come out. It's about kind of quarterbacks throughout history, and I think it's going to be great. I've managed to secure an early copy of it. I haven't dug in yet, but anything on your mind that you want to wrap up in closing? Anything we didn't touch on?
I'm really confused and fascinated by the Seahawks,
Mhm.
what they're doing. Just generally speaking, I think they drafted a guard out of North Dakota State, and then the kind of combustible safety out of South Carolina, and then Arroyo tight end. They got some good value there on him out of the
Miami.
tight end out of Miami, and then Jalen Milrow as a
Yeah,
developmental guy in the third. So, Torrey Horton, I know he was kind of a buzzy wide receiver out of Colorado State, but just generally speaking, just kind of a bringing in Darnold and kind of cleaning house a little bit. Lockett's gone and
And
Metcalf's obviously gone.
Kubiak.
Yeah,
Bringing
yeah.
in
Clint with a K, Kubiak there, not to
I'm
be
excited
confused
to
with
see what
Clay with
Darnold
a
does.
K.
Yeah,
Is the
back in
is
his
Clay
familiar system.
the Clay the offensive coordinator in
Yeah. In that
or de
San Francisco.
facto offensive coordinator in San Francisco. I
Yep.
mean, Clint got kicked on his way out the door from New Orleans
yeah.
last year, and then between him and then Slowick,
Did you guys
people were
boys
shitting all
Slowick
over
end up
Slowick.
anywhere? Did he get a
Good
job somewhere?
question.
I don't know.
I don't know.
That's a good question. Let's see. He's
Whoosh,
probably
while TC looks that up, any parting thoughts that you have?
He's went to the Dolphins.
a
Oh,
senior
did he?
offensive assistant or senior passing coordinator for
So
Los Dolphins.
Gotcha.
Get right.
Whoosh, any closing thoughts? Anything we missed on?
no, just very excited for the season to get going. Get excited to see what happens. There's fresh energy in the building in Santa Clara. So yeah, it could be an interesting year. I love the what the Niners are doing. Hell yeah, we're ready, and I can't wait to get. We
Yeah,
need to get Randy back on here ASAP.
for sure. All right, I think that kind of does it. Thanks as always for doing some knowing with us. We'll be back kind of at a more regular cadence during the regular season, right, TC?
We will. Yeah, we'll do kind of probably every other week, hopefully during the season,
Love that.
and really try to get more versatile with it. So, trying to think any other housekeeping notes. Yeah, we'll probably do one as camp opens up. You guys thinking
Yeah,
like, probably early to mid August, get one out
yeah,
there.
Season preview
Get
kind
some
of
yeah,
predictions.
yeah. I think I like doing preview things earlier rather than later. Getting
sure.
them on there before everybody else gets their takes out
That's
there,
true.
so we're not
I love that.
spoiled by that. So, good stuff. And guys, I wish just a great off-season training program. Don't get hurt away from the facility.
Love
Uh,
that. Yeah.
that's never good. And then, yeah, Randy, safe travels, sir. Must be 21 or older and present in select states for Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino or 18 plus and present in DC. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg-help.com. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit Gambling Help line ma.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York.